What's up, Weebos? My name is Joshua Gooley, and welcome to another pointless struggle that ends in us playing games as always. I am making this video before I even have a setup because, I want to give my thoughts on Final Fantasy 14. A lot of people, I'm sure, have played Final Fantasy, and, they haven't gotten into 14 because it's an MMO. It deviates from the norm. I grew up as a kid and I wasn't really much into JRPGs, really didn't like the whole anime and all that sort of thing. It just wasn't my thing. And the sort of games that I did play was like Legacy of Kain, Max Payne, Blood Rain, Manhunt, anything that was really violent and just wasn't like teen, more mature. The very few teen games I did play, the only teen games I think I played was like Uncharted maybe and the Batman games, stuff like that. Uh, my first experience with Final Fantasy, and this is gonna be blasphemy to a lot of you that, grew up with Final Fantasy when you were younger in the PlayStation day or the SNES days, but my first experience with Final Fantasy was Final Fantasy VII Remake. It was right before Corona had hit, and all I really had to play was Resident Evil 3 Remake. So, you know, I got Final Fantasy VII Remake because I had heard that, like everyone, that plays games, you hear about Final Fantasy VII and what an amazing game it was, So I had always wondered about it, but I wasn't into the whole, turn-based and just wasn't into it. Of course, the more I got into anime, the more I started liking the style of it. Started seeing things like Black Butler and Tokyo Ghoul and Attack on Titan, and then, the art style of Final Fantasy started to appeal to me more. So I got the 7 remake and I loved it. The combat in it was beautiful. It's like real time, and you slash and you do heavy attacks, but you also got special attacks, and you work in sort of turn-based mechanics, and you can switch to your party members. And any of you that played it know how good the combat is. It's like I think Final Fantasy have Square Enix. They've hit their milestone. In my opinion, this is the way that the combat in Final Fantasy should stay. Final Fantasy 15, the combat is kind of like 13, where it just kind of happens, and you can use items and things like that. But overall, you don't really control your characters. In fact, the only difference between 13 and 15 is that in 15 you hold down the circle button and you can, I guess, parry and guard by pressing X right before they hit. But other than that, it's about the same as 13. It just kind of unfolds before your eyes, and you don't really have much control. Now, yeah. Now getting into 14, I never played an MMO before. My girlfriend, she's played some MMOs before and stuff. So when I started playing it, she was like, "Oh yeah, this is my kind of thing," because she's played the computer games before. I never had. So I had played the 7 remake, and then I wanted more, so I played 15, and I wanted to play 13, but didn't have a PS3. So I mean, I have one now. I bought one because I wanted to play 13 that bad that I got one. But in the meantime, after I beat Ghost of Tsushima, I went ahead and got Final Fantasy 14. Now, little warning: Final Fantasy 14, if you jump into it now, is a long, long game. She has been watching me play it now for 4 months, okay? And uh, it's got the whole main game called A Realm Reborn, and then it has 3 whole expansions. Now, normal games like Ghost of Tsushima, Red Dead Redemption, what else do I got over here? Horizon Zero Dawn, uh, Code Vein, most of those games, they don't take very long, maybe about 2 weeks. So, A Realm Reborn, each expansion, the way it works is it has a segment. There's 4 segments, and then it has post-game content. So you have A Realm Reborn, and then you have content afterwards that leads up into the first expansion, Heaven's Ward. After you beat Heaven's Ward, there's post-game content that leads up into Stormblood. After you beat Stormblood, there's post-game content that leads up into Shadowbringers. Then Shadowbringers has post-game content that hopefully is leading up into the next expansion. But with the PS5 dropping, I ain't exactly sure what they're gonna do.
To be honest, I think the game is longer than
It's long. Yeah, it's. I've seen the map on Hollow Knight.
pretty
It's.
long. My God, it still sounds pretty longer following.
Well, it's Hollow Knight is a Souls title, and those games are somewhat long. To me, they're longer than most games, like because it has so much in it, and basically because I replay it over and over again. I mean, there are some games that are deviants, like The Witcher 3 and Fallout. There's just so much crap in those games. It's gonna take longer than 2 weeks, and you just get so into the world that you're just playing it forever and ever with stuff outside the actual main game. But Final Fantasy XIV is long. It takes about 2 weeks for each expansion, and then another maybe week and a half or 2 weeks for the post game content. So that's why I've been playing it for 4 months, because it takes about a month for me to beat the expansion and everything after it. So, after about 2.5 expansions, I was about halfway through Stormblood, the third expansion, when I decided that it was just taking way too long and I was tired of it. So I started, just really listening to the cutscenes that actually had dialogue. If it didn't have dialogue, I just skipped through it. So I wish I would have done that from the beginning, because most of the cutscenes in the game you can skip past. It doesn't really matter. It's not imperative that you know what's going on. And I like the whole cinematic experience, so I would rather actually watch things that have dialogue and stuff. So anyways, let's get into the actual game itself. This was my first experience with tab targeting. I guess you can't really see the screen too well, but tab targeting is they have these little tabs at the bottom because it was originally a computer game only. So you like use your mouse and you go over and you click on what things you want to use, like attacks, stuff like that. But of course, on PlayStation, you use L2 and R2 and circle, and you can switch between your different menus by pressing R1. It's different, and it took some getting used to. When I first played it, I was going freaking nuts. I mean, even small things like giving somebody an item was like, it was just weird. Like, it brings up the box, and then it has an empty space with the item you gotta give them, and then you gotta press X, and then go find the item, and then you gotta put it in the thing, and then give it to them, and it's like, why? Why all of this? Why not just talk to him and it gives it to him? I mean, come on. But I and there's just so many mechanics in the game that are just bizarre. Now, one thing that you might hear that I most definitely heard is about the community in Final Fantasy XIV. You hear about how wonderful these people are, baby. Why don't you come over here and come on over? Well, let's talk about this for a second, okay? Now, this is my girlfriend Emily. Love her, she's great. But we've been playing Final Fantasy XIV together. So I've had an experience where normally you play with people and they're pretty cool. They'll uh they'll help you out and things
They'll
like
help you
that.
if you need it.
Yeah.
But some people on there are so rude. Like,
They're mean. There's some of these dungeons just have weird mechanics, and if you've never played it, you have no idea what's going on, and you got people, really mad at you saying rude things because you don't know what you're doing, and it brings some off the wall mechanic that you've never seen before. So, it just kind of happens and you're like, "What the hell?"
yeah, it's like
But these people have played the game forever. They've been playing the game for God knows how long. Played the same dungeon for like dozens of times.
if you're the tank and other people are supposed to be attacking the others around you, not trying to, get their attention,
There's four types of, for people that haven't played it, there's
yeah.
four types of characters that you can play. You have the tank, which is the beefiest character. They have the most HP, and they get all of the enemy's attention, basically.
But
That's what I
if
play
you're like
as.
me and an archer, that's
She's a DPS, which
DPS.
has archer and people that do damage
Yeah,
per
to do damage,
second.
you're supposed to be
DPS.
behind the tank, following the tank, so they can take all the damage while you attack them.
Right, yeah, they have
But
to.
some people will go up ahead of you, and that's why you die faster, and that's why the healer can keep up. You know, it's healing other people. You know,
So you have the tank, you got two DPS, and then you got the healer. So the
yeah.
tank gets all the enemy's attention and does damage. DPS, two of them, they do damage, and then you've got the healer, which
Which is supposed
heals
to stay
everybody.
back and supposed to stay out of the fight.
Right.
Sometimes they like to come around and collect all of them.
So
And
I played a dungeon called Doma Castle. You haven't gotten there yet.
no, not
She
yet.
hasn't even made it to Heaven's Ward
I've
yet,
been
but I'm
slacking.
I'm close to the end of Shadowbringers. But yeah, I was at this. I've had a couple bad experiences. People call me the worst tank ever, things like that. But my worst experience was at Doma Castle, and I'm there, and I'm not saying that I'm God and I control how the dungeon goes, but I mean, if people are going to be running ahead of me, getting enemies' attention, they should probably let me know beforehand, that they can handle a lot more and that they can pick up the slack. I kind of decide, how many enemies I'm going to pull because I might not be comfortable pulling a dozen enemies, that are doing that much damage. So other people were running, this DPS guy was running ahead of me, grabbing all the other enemies and bringing them back. And then we were dying. He was like yelling at me, mad about it because I couldn't keep up with all the enemies, and I was doing my AoE attack to get all the enemies' attention, but it wasn't enough because he kept pulling things. So we died, and he's like, the enemies spawn, and I'm like, no, you're running ahead. Quit running ahead, grabbing things, and he's like, no, they just spawn. And
And
then we get to the last boss, and this guy is like, feel free not to heal the tank.
yeah, that's fucking that's bullshit.
It was
And
trauma.
they didn't even heal
It was
his ass.
traumatizing for me. I died. The boss killed me because, of course, I'm taking all the damage, and I die, and they don't resurrect me.
They listened to him
Yeah,
like
they
an
actually listen to
asshole.
this motherfucker, man. And I'm like, are you
That's fucked
fucking
up.
kidding me? What a bunch of pricks. What, like, you know? So then I played the dungeon again because I actually wanted to watch the cutscenes and have a good experience, and I played it. And lo and behold, the enemies don't just fucking spawn. That bastard was running ahead, grabbing more enemies than I was comfortable with, than I could handle, bringing them all back there, expecting me to get all their fucking attention, take all their damage, when I don't even know what the fuck is going on. Because I'm busy trying to fight 4 or 5 enemies, and he's running ahead, grabbing more. Like, dude, if you're gonna do that, at least fucking tell me about it. Or just, but he's like, no, they just spawn. And that happened like 3 times where he tells me, oh, these enemies are just spawning. No, they're not just fucking spawning because I played the dungeon with other people and I hung back and they actually played the way you're supposed to fucking play it and nothing came. So, and I'm not trying to say that, I control everything, but, at least have some dialogue and talk to me, I mean, if you're going to be pulling that enemies, at least tell me about it. So, outside of that, outside of the dungeons and stuff, first of all, I don't like playing games with people. People tend to ruin games for me. I love games like The Last of Us, where it's just you having a great story experience. It's
Yeah,
wonderful.
when you play with people, some people think they know what your DPS is or your class or what you're supposed to be doing, and they're a whole other class, and they're telling you what to do in the text, like, oh, do this, oh, do this.
Sometimes people have a different view of how things should go,
Yeah,
like some healers will just heal and they won't really do much damage. Really, everybody in the dungeon is supposed to be doing damage outside of their role because you have your role of what you're supposed to do other than DPS whose only job is to do damage, but the tank is supposed to grab all the enemy's attention, draw aggro and do damage, and the healer is supposed to heal and do damage. But sometimes you have tanks that are just getting the boss or the enemy's attention and not doing much damage, or you have a healer that's just healing people and not doing damage, or sometimes you have these healers that are only doing damage, and I'm over here, my health is dropping to like 1, and then I'm wiping because she's not freaking healing me, and she ain't healing nobody else. I don't know what the hell she's doing. And I say she because most of the time healers are women. I ain't exactly sure why. It seems
Yeah,
like
it's
it anyways,
mostly
don't it?
that they're women.
It seems like it's
It's because
girls
it's
mostly.
easiest to do, and they think, oh,
No, man, it is not the
I mean, they
easiest.
seem like they say it's easy as
I
because
would
they
not want to be a
start.
healer. I would not want people dying or dropping health and blaming me because they're dying. I think it's got to be the hardest. I would not want to be a healer. I mean, would you want everybody depending on you to heal
Well,
them and have your health
no,
up?
but
Nah, that does not
I
sound
guess the
like fun to
easiest
me.
class would be my class, with DPS.
I've heard some people say it's the hardest class. Everybody has their own
I think it's
opinion.
pretty easy. I mean, you don't have to attract,
The boss or
bosses or anything. You can stay behind and shoot at distance by shots.
All right. Now, Final Fantasy, outside of the dungeons and my experience with that, it is a Final Fantasy game, especially the first one, A Realm Reborn, is very Final Fantasy. It has summons in it, but it's not like the other Final Fantasies where you fight them and then you have them and you can use them against bosses and enemies. It's not like that. In the old games, you use summons like you use a limit break pretty much, but in this, they're called primals, and you fight them. They're enemies, is what they are. That's what the summons are in
You
this
get little
game.
characters,
Yeah,
little pets,
yeah, you get minions.
little minions. Yeah, you can get those. But if you're in a dungeon, not a people, you're not gonna get that.
But there's things in the game that are very Final Fantasy, like it's got Sid in it, which is in all of them. He's like an engineer that does things. You got Biggs and Wedge. They are in all the Final Fantasy
Well,
games.
it's a Final Fantasy game if it's got Gil in it.
Yeah, the money you use is Gil. There's this guy named Valtry in Stormbringers or Shadowbringers, and he's like the fat guy who runs this city, and he sits around and he's like, petting all the weird sin eaters like lions and stuff, and he's like the fat ruler that has hoes feeding him grapes pretty much, and he reminds me of Don Corneo in Part 7. Uh, it's got chocobos, it's got moogles,
It's got this weird bird.
it's got the gunblade, Magitech. It's got all of the Final Fantasy tropes, and I think it's cool. But outside of A Realm Reborn, it starts to get less like fun. I don't know. It goes on and on. It's so long that it falls away from. I think originally A Realm Reborn was supposed to be all it was gonna be, which was its own self-contained game, but then it just turned into a lot more. And it's got its tropes. It's got the standoffish kind of guy, like how Cloud is. You've kind of got Thancred, and you've also got Minfilia, who's the god type Aerith type girl, and then you got the sexy girls. You got this blind cat girl named Stola, and she's like the sexy girl.
I guess some
Sexy to me. Uh,
yeah,
it
getting all pussy
Oops. Yeah, it's got all the summons in it are very they're in all the Final Fantasy. You got Shiva, the Ice Girl. You got Ifrit, Odin, Gilgamesh, the guy you always fight in a bridge on him. Ramuh, the lightning sort of Thor type guy, and you got the Titan. It's got all the main summons, but in
Yeah,
this
they
they're
got
called
some good summons. Like, they're not actual summons.
yeah. And now I'm going to get to what I always look for. I listen to YouTube mostly, and like when I'm working and stuff like that, since I can't play the game, I'm listening to things about it. And a lot of what I look for is reviews on the story of it, and I can't find it. I find gameplay of Final Fantasy 14 and I find reviews of it, but I don't really find any reviews of the story. People talk about it, but I don't know. People are afraid to talk about the spoilers, I guess, which I'm not going to give away any huge spoilers here. I'm not going to tell you about the Ashians and what their whole plan is. I mean, even if I did, it really wouldn't ruin anything, but
There's a lot of stuff.
God, it's so much, but it's a really good game. It's called Ether, and it's pretty much like an element that doesn't exist. But there, it's like the build up. It's like the spiritual makeup of what people are made of. It's called Ether. Yeah, And if you have enough of it and enough people believe in something and they have a large quantity of ether, they can summon, a god or something like that. If they all have a similar goal and they all have a picture in their head of what they want to summon and the large quantity of ether, which comes from mainly crystals,
Basically just, you know,
they have crystallized ether, and then there's also a lot of ether that comes
religion.
from things like the dragon eyes. But yeah, it's
They
kind
make
of
up their own god, to
yeah,
God, basically.
it's like that show American Gods where there's like a Mexican Jesus because all the Mexicans believe that Jesus was like
Basically.
Mexican. So yeah, it's kind of like that how enough people believe in it so it becomes real. But all these people have a lot of ether and then they all believe in it. So the Empire is attacking the beast tribes that are like the water monster things, so they all want help. So they all pray to Leviathan, the big water dragon type thing, and they have a large quantity of ether crystals. So it summons Leviathan, and of course that's not good for the Empire because they don't need these big freaking monsters coming and destroying them because enough, freaking beast tribes are praying for it. So I thought it was really cool. I really liked it. The main characters, you got some really cool main characters. Minfilia,
Too bad most of them die.
yeah, a lot of them do die. By the end, you've got Alphanod, his twin sister. You got Thancred. Uh, what is that guy's name? The French sounding name? I don't know, man. He's got the card type things, man. What's that guy's name? You remember his name? It's
I'll figure it out because I'm stupid.
I don't know, but a lot of people do die. You're in this group called the Scions, which is kind of like Avalanche in Seven, and a lot of them just die, and you got to get rid of their bodies, and it's sad, but it is cool. It's really good. The characters kind of mean more because you know that their life is
You get
forfeit.
attached to them,
Yeah, you get attached to them, and you know that they can die, so it kind of means more to you watching them and stuff like that, and just seeing how their relationship progresses is really good. And there's these guys in hoods that are like the main bad guys that pull the strings, and at the beginning of A Realm Reborn you see them and throughout it, but it takes like 4 expansions before you actually find out what their deal is, why they're bad. You got the Warrior of Darkness, who's also another Final Fantasy trope in his group of people, and basically there's like 13 shards that are outside of the main shard, and it was like these two primals back in the day, the oldest ones, Hydaelyn and Zodiark, were fighting each other, and Hydaelyn fucked up Zodiark so bad that it burst the fucking planet into 13 pieces, and the one we're on is one of them, and the Ashians were the original race of people, and they summoned those two original primals. And God, it's so cool. It's such a good story. But
Yeah.
there's very few of them left, and they're trying to make the Earth. They're trying to put all the shards back together. But to do that, there has to be a calamity that destroys it, and then its ether joins back. And they're trying to do that to all 13 of them and make it back into the original planet. Because these Ashians, who were originally the first race, they could just dream anything up and make it real just by dreaming it. And it's cool, man. It's really cool. They can take over somebody's body and use them and stuff like that. And you got the evil empire, and it's so cool. I like Xenos. A lot of people hate him. A lot of the characters, I love the Crystal Exarch, who I'm not going to tell you who he is, but he's actually a character from way back in A Realm Reborn. And when he actually takes off his hood and you find out who he is, it's like, whoa, for real? And it's so cool. It's got time travel. I love time travel. It's freaking awesome. So,
I haven't got there yet.
Man, there ain't no way she's gonna get that far. I mean,
That,
it's
yeah,
just,
that's my
it's
first
gonna
one.
take you forever to get that far. Yeah, mostly I play because I work all day, and when I get off, I play, and then on my days off, I play. I'm only off one day a week, but when I'm not at work, she don't really, spend a lot of time on it. But yeah, if you want to play Final Fantasy 14, I'd say it's a good time. If you like Final Fantasy, it's fun. It's just different,
It
and
is different. I want to start with it. Oh.
You got to have a lot of time to piss away on a game too. You know, if you've got months to piss away on a game and that's what your life is, which is why my channel is called The Pointless Struggle, because life is a pointless struggle
But
and every day it ends in me pointlessly playing a fucking game that don't matter, that don't achieve a fucking thing. That's life. So yeah, if you've got time to waste on it, then play it. But it's okay. It's not bad. I mean, if I were to start with a Final Fantasy, I'd probably start with 7 Remake because it's really good. Final Fantasy 15 is really good too. I'm playing 13 now. I'm at the very end of Final Fantasy 14, and I'm playing 13 because I got my PS3 in the mail, and I really need a break from 14. I've been playing it so much, for 4 months now. That's all she's
yeah,
been watching me do. And it's so much, man. It's just, I work 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, so I don't have a lot of time to play it. But I'm playing 13 now, and I'll probably do a review on that. But I've heard terrible things about 13, about how bad it was, and I'm playing it now, and
I
it's
played it in the past, but it was pretty okay. You know,
it's a good bit of fun. I mean, it's like
they said it was just one long hallway, but it's got some surrounding to it. It's not just one big old hallway.
it's like Max Payne. If you played Max Payne, where you run around and you kill stuff, and then there's cinematics, and it goes back to it, and
Like a
there's
little bit of
there's
that,
little
yeah.
areas you can run to and get potions and stuff like that. I mean, yeah, it's not the most. It's everybody is so used to open world nowadays that everybody's just expecting another Red Dead Redemption or, Hideo Kojima has turned Metal Gear Solid into what he turned Metal Gear Solid and the Phantom Pain into a huge open world game, and Death Stranding is everything is becoming open world, and I don't like it, and it's kind of a breath of fresh air to play Final Fantasy 13 because it's not open world, and I'm
Play
so
with
exhausted
people
with
is
open world.
exhausting.
I'm so exhausted with the open world. I really am. That's all games are nowadays. And I mean, I get that they cost a lot more, so they need more people to spend more time on them and stuff. I mean, games used to what Hollow Knight took like 60,000 for them to make, whereas God of War 4, the newest one, took like 90 million or 100 million. It makes a 60,000 compared to 100 million. It's taking a lot more money to make games nowadays. Also about Final Fantasy 14, it's subscription based. So you buy it in the expansions, but then you gotta pay, I think it's like $12 a month if you only got one character. I have 8 characters, so it's $15, which a few more dollars, and I get however many character or 8 characters and stuff like that.
Yeah,
I
I
think
use
it's
that
cool.
one character over characters.
No, that's against the terms of service. You can't say that. Yeah,
That's crazy.
technically, if anyone other than you uses one of your 8 characters, they'll shut down your account because
But I don't have an account.
yeah, she hasn't started working yet. But that's besides the point. Anyways, it is cool, it is fun, but it's an MMO open world. So, but if you have played Final Fantasy games and you want more Final Fantasy, it's okay. If you like the tab targeting where you stand there and you press buttons to fight, but I prefer part 7 where it's real time and you slash and you do heavy attacks, but then you also have magic, but then you can also use items and also slow down time and pick which attacks you want to use and switch between your characters. And to me, just 7 Remake is just amazing. Every Final Fantasy needs to be like 7 Remake from now on. It's just incredible. But I've sucked Final Fantasy 7 Remake's dick for long enough now. So, yeah, this is about Final Fantasy 14. Um, it's decent. It's got a really good story, and it was my third Final Fantasy game I played, so I guess it's kind of holding a special place in my heart, I suppose. And I really want to go back and play the original PlayStation Final Fantasies, but they're just so old and cruddy. I don't think I can, but I wish I could. So. There you go. If you want to check it out, I would. Just keep in mind that you got to pay for it, and it is an MMO. It's World of Warcraft, but Final Fantasy skinned, and it's gonna piss you off, and the other people are gonna do things that are gonna piss you off, and you have to play with other people until you finally get to Shadowbringers. Which Shadowbringers is cool because you can use the trust system and you can do dungeons without having to play with people, and it's fucking awesome. I wish they would have done it since the beginning.
Well, thanks for joining the
Y'all have a good day now.